Hello Dub Nation, it's always a thrill to connect with you, especially as we're about to reveal the latest news that could shape the fate of our beloved Golden State Warriors. But before we dive into this whirlwind of information, let me make a friendly request. Show us some love by clicking the like button to strengthen our bond, and hey, if you are not subscribed yet, join our channel for a thrilling and emotional journey. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay ahead of the game. 6 key needs for the Golden State Warriors lineup this offseason. The Golden State Warriors find themselves in a somewhat unfamiliar situation this offseason, needing to respond to a disappointing year that saw them finish 10th in the Western Conference. With 36-year-old Stephen Curry still one of the league's best players, the Warriors are expected to push forward in an attempt to return to the playoffs rather than undergo any kind of rebuild. The Golden State Warriors have several roster deficiencies that will be addressed through trades or free agency in this offseason period. The Golden State will need some level of change, as their roster this season was clearly ill-equipped to handle what many of the top teams in the league had to throw at them. They have some young talent that should provide internal development, but relying solely on that as the sole source of improvement is a risky proposition. Mike Dunleavy Jr. and the front office will have a busy offseason ahead, so let's take a look at 6 of the biggest needs the franchise must address in the coming months. Find a second star to pair with Stephen Curry. As confirmed by Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, the Warriors are expected to go star hunting this offseason, hoping to add a genuine second star alongside Curry. The Golden State often relied on the 2-time MVP this season, including in the play-in elimination game, where they struggled to create offense. Jonathan Kuminga showed signs of becoming the second offensive star in his third year, although he also ended the season coming off the bench after a knee injury slightly halted his progress. The 21-year-old could very well become that player, but the Warriors would be better served with a proven commodity given Curry's timeline. This doesn't mean trading Kuminga. Ideally, you keep him, but he would likely need to close a deal with a superstar like Kevin Durant. A reunion between the 2-time Finals MVP and the Warriors has been speculated, but the franchise may have to settle for 1 or 2 tiers below. Resign Klay Thompson. A straightforward contractual agreement needs to happen between the Warriors and franchise legend Klay Thompson. Firstly, there's the history that Thompson has in the Bay as a 4-time champion, 5-time All-Star, and future Hall of Famer. Sure, his 2023-24 season was somewhat disappointing and ended disastrously against the Sacramento Kings in the play-in tournament, but Thompson played a critical role as still one of the NBA's best three-point shooters. He ranked 4th in three-pointers made in the league with 38.5% shooting, with him and Stephen Curry often left as the only 2 perimeter threats on a roster lacking outside shooting beyond the legendary backcourt. Perhaps the biggest aspect is that Golden State cannot replace Thompson if he departs. Their cap situation means the $20 to $25 million they want to pay the veteran shooter cannot go elsewhere, leaving them at a disadvantage regarding who they could get in free agency. Of course, if the Orlando Magic or another rival team wants to pay Thompson an exorbitant contract well above his perceived value, then you can understand the Warriors choosing to go a different route and move on. However, if the yearly number is close to the $20 to $25 million range, and maybe as high as $30 million, then it's a deal the franchise simply needs to offer. Sort out the backup point guard situation. Another significant decision for the Warriors this offseason will come in the way of Chris Paul, who has a non-guaranteed $30 million contract for 2024 to 25. It seems inevitable that the franchise will waive the veteran point guard unless they opt to guarantee part or all of the contract to trade Paul for a more valuable piece. Assuming Paul departs, where does Golden State go with their backup point guard behind Stephen Curry? As much as the franchise didn't come close to where they hoped after acquiring the 12-time All-Star, Paul was good for the Warriors outside of his lengthy absence due to a hand fracture midseason. He accepted a bench role, averaging 9.2 points and 6.8 assists, while the Golden State posted a plus 110 in his minutes throughout the regular season. Even though the franchise rightfully doesn't want to pay $30 million to a backup point guard again, Paul will still leave a gap that will be hard to fill. The Warriors should consider adding another guard through a trade? Perhaps DeJounte Murray, for example? He wouldn't be the perfect choice, but the 27-year-old would be able to handle minutes not occupied by Curry while playing alongside the franchise star. If Golden State leaves this to free agency, the cupboard will look quite empty in terms of available options. Tyus Jones would be out of their price range, as would Markelle Fultz. DeLon Wright, Monty Morris, or Aaron Holiday may be their most realistic targets, but each would be a significant downgrade from Paul. They could hand the keys to the second unit to Brandon Podziemski if all else fails, although that seems like an unfair burden for the 21-year-old, despite how impressive he was during his rookie season. more shots from the attack court. As mentioned earlier, the Warriors often found themselves lacking in three-point shooting this season outside of Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. This is particularly the case in the attack court, where they struggled to replace the invaluable role that Otto Porter Jr. played in the 2022 championship season. Their traditional centers in Tracy Jackson-Davis and Kevin Looney don't operate anywhere beyond the paint. Draymond Green shot a career-high 39.5% from beyond the arc, but he takes just over 2 per game, and defenses don't respect the 34-year-old significantly. Jonathan Kuminga's shooting is a work in progress, but it's clear he's much better attacking the rim than settling for three-point attempts. Even at the small forward position, how much can Golden State rely on Andrew Wiggins' jumper, assuming he's still on the roster for next season? The Canadian increased his three-point percentage to 35.8% this season, but he was often inconsistent, not to mention his 3.6 attempts were the lowest level in 7 years. The Warriors tried to add frontcourt shooting with JaMychal Green and Dario Saric in each of the last 2 seasons, but both failed to make the kind of impact the franchise hoped for. The third time could be a charm? More bench shooting. Most teams have a three-point shooter they can implement off the bench when needed, but that's something that was completely lacking for the Warriors this season. Brandon Podziemski shot a healthy 38.5%, but on a smaller volume. The options from the attack court aren't a threat as stated earlier, and teams are more than happy to let Gary Payton II show up in the corners. Golden State could bring Thompson back to the bench, as they did shortly before the All-Star break, but all that will likely do is push the lack of shots onto the starting group. This is where Moses Moody's development will be crucial, as he is the only bench player who could be a high-volume and high-quality three-point shooter. Regardless, adding more perimeter threats should be a priority for the Warriors. Defensive 2.5-meter center option. Tracy Jackson-Davis was exceptional in his rookie season, showing immense two-way ability with averages of 7.9 points, 5.0 rebounds, and over 1 block per game. The 24-year-old is under team control for 3 more seasons and appears to be the center of both present and future for the Warriors. As much as that's the case, Jackson-Davis is still just 6 feet 9 inches and will be entering his second NBA season. Look at the Giants making their presence felt in the Western Conference playoffs right now. The Timberwolves trio of Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and Naz Reid, 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic, and Rookie of the Year runner-up Chet Holmgren. If the Warriors want to return to the playoffs next season, do they really want to go in with Jackson-Davis as their main option against some of the names mentioned? They need at least a genuine equal footing, as they haven't had one since James Wiseman departed via trade in February last year, not that he was making any impact anyway. Finding a suitable option is easier said than done. Perhaps they make a big trade to acquire someone like Jared Allen, as proposed here, but then where does that leave Jackson-Davis? In terms of realistic free agent targets, luring Mason Plumlee from the LA Clippers might be the best possibility. The Warriors could certainly enter next season with Jackson-Davis and Kevin Looney with Draymond Green as their small ball option, but that doesn't really prioritize their aspirations for a deep playoff run.